Coming up next on Words and Numbers, the Rapture,
the cost of housing,
HOAs in Phoenix,
and living in bubbles.
All this and more next on Words and Numbers, a CiVL original production. Check us out at CiVL.com. That's CiVL.com.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Antony.
And this is Words and Numbers.
Ant, what's new and exciting in your world this week?
Somebody sent me an article. I'm just looking it up here. It's one of these things that gets repeated all the time, and it's the title, I'll read you the title, 8 Everyday Things Lower Middle Class Families Could Afford in the 80s But Can't Anymore. And it's a whole list of stuff. And let me start by saying I also run across articles saying, well, anybody that says the cost of living is not as bad as what people say is just out of touch. I'm going to look at some numbers, and people are going to get all bent out of shape, but this guy, the article lists all kinds of things we could take issue with, but the one I thought was most interesting is the cost of housing. And specifically, this article is talking about the price of housing in the 80s versus the price of housing now, and we can't afford the price of housing now. Why can't it be like the 80s? In fact, in it, he says, my parents bought a house for $100,000 in the 1980s, turned around, resold it for $800,000, and it's the same, house that would have sold for $100,000 back in the 70s, and nobody could afford it today. And he uses this as an example of look at what's happening to the cost of housing. Now, let me start off right here. I looked up the median price of housing in the U.S., and it's nowhere near $800,000. It's around $400,000, so somewhat less, about half of that. Furthermore, in 25 of the 50 states, it's below $380,000. In fact, you can go all the way down to Iowa. The median single-family homes, 230. Oklahoma, it's about 250. Same in Ohio. Michigan, 250. Louisiana, Mississippi, 250, right? The house he was talking about? California. Where the median house in California is $866,000. So
I would submit that might have a lot more to do with California than much anything else.
Right. So first statement here is, if you're going to start saying things about price of housing now versus the price of housing in the past, at the least, don't cherry pick things like price of housing in California. That's a way outlier.
But Ant, we all know that when n equals 1, you can make a much better argument.
It is, yeah. It's a much more enticing argument to say, well, things cost $800,000.
Then you show up with your median cost of housing in various states and all this other nonsense that you spew on a regular basis. This is just going to anger everybody.
Yeah, sorry. All right. So let me anger people a little bit more. I'm looking at, and again, understand averages are kind of dicey because very rich people can pull the averages up. So everything I'm going to talk about here are medians, the guy in the middle. So the median house, the median full-time worker, all of this. In the 1980s, so that's what he was talking about here. In the 1980s, the median house cost about 260 weeks worth of work for the median worker. So whatever it is you're earning, 260 weeks worth of those wages, that buys you a house in the 1980s. Today, 360. So significantly more. But the price of a house, not the price, the square footage of the house is significantly higher. It's back in the 1980s, the median house, again, this is the one in the middle. The median house was about 1,600 square feet. Now it's about 2,400. So you're getting 50% more house today than you got in the 1980s. So granted, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but 50% more house. Now, you could still argue you're behind the 8 ball here because if you've done the math, actually you're not. You're better off because the price of the house today is 38% more than in 1980. And understand what I mean when I say that. I don't mean it's 38% more in terms of the price. It's way more in terms of the price. But relative to your income, it takes 38% more labor today to buy a house than it did in 1980s. but you're getting 50% more house. So you're actually better off. And that's not the end of the story.
Tell me more, Ant.
In 1980, the average mortgage rate, 12%.
Yeah.
Today?
Things were kind of rough back then.
Today, 6.7.
And that's not great either.
No, it's not great.
Is not a great rate.
Yeah, I know. I bought one of my first houses early in our marriage at maybe I had 5.25%. And I thought that's a bit hefty.
Yep. When I lived in Western Pennsylvania, right around the corner from you, I had 5.7.
Yeah. Heck of a lot better than 6.7 today. So yeah. I think part of what's going on here, and I want to give people credit here when they say the price of housing is rising. They're absolutely correct if you look at the past, let's say, 10 to 15 years. Housing is way more expensive than it was 10 to 15 years ago, relative to wages. If you take a much wider perspective and you look at today versus the 1980s, it's actually the other way around. It was more expensive in the 1980s. So, right. so to both the boomers and the Gen Zs, you're both correct. The boomers are right. It is more expensive back then than it is now, but Gen Z is also correct. It's more expensive now than it was 10, 15 years ago.
All right. So your assignment, Ant, should you choose to accept it, is for next week or next time, or however we're saying this now, for a future iteration of Words and Numbers, I want you to tell me about the median citizen. Does the median citizen live in a house? Does he own a house? Does he rent a house? Does he rent an apartment? Et cetera, et cetera. Because there's an interesting question, right?
It's a really good question. And it's something that I find people who rent seem to think that they are flushing money down the drain.
Well, because in some respects they are.
Yeah, what they're missing, and they don't catch it until they buy their first house.
Maintenance
all
costs.
Of the things that the landlord is handling, all of a sudden that's now right. You got to deal with that.
Yep, that's right. And I don't cast a lot of blame on them. They just don't see it. Mm-hmm. They think I'm paying my bill every month. Go fix the damn dishwasher, right?
Right.
So, okay. But where does that median citizen fall? And what's happened to the cost of rent over the same period, et cetera, et cetera. And there's all kinds of great further questions we can ask.
There are, and as long as you're on the topic, let me shift gears a little bit and talk about household wealth, because as I was digging into these house pricing numbers, this came up and it just shocked me. I've never seen these numbers before. And this comes from the Census Bureau, right? So they're all on the up and up. Household wealth. And it's comparing across the ages. So we break it down to the young people, the middle-aged, the older, and then the elderly. Household wealth for married couples is 3 to 5 times what it is for unmarried. So an unmarried right. male or an unmarried female.
Let's leave that as a teaser for the next episode we will record, which will be about wealth.
Fair enough. Let me put a footnote. Apparently, according to the numbers, getting married is as valuable to your wealth as getting a higher education.
But if you're a man, you'll die a lot sooner and you'll be a lot crankier.
Get Words and Numbers on CiVL.com and on CiVL's TV and mobile apps. Regular episodes are free. Sign up for an annual membership to support our show and for access to member-exclusive content.
All of this is for naught, Ant. Do you know why?
Tell me.
Because tomorrow, as a matter of fact, there's no reason we should even be recording this episode. Because tomorrow, September 23rd, or perhaps the day after, September 24th, there's a little murkiness in the prediction. The rapture will occur.
Again?
Yes, again.
Are they right this time?
But this time they mean it, damn it. And it's apparently now to be coincidental with Rosh Hashanah. Our Jewish friends' celebration of their new year. They've got way more many years than we do. It's like year 20,755.
Are you the one that years ago said to me tongue-in-cheek you want to invest in a whole bunch of clothes and like on the day of the purported rapture, like lay them out on sidewalks and stuff.
Come on. You have to admit that'd be hilarious. That would be absolutely hilarious.
No offense to those who believe in the rapture, but I will point out that this has been predicted many times and nothing has happened.
Well, the rapture is predicted endlessly. The return of Jesus has been, again, endlessly, and the end of the world has been predicted endlessly. Pick your poison. Which of the three will we talk about today? Well,
it's like an economist predicting a recession. Eventually, they're right.
Yeah, that's right. Sooner or later, you got to be right. But, I mean, come on. This all starts, this version of it starts with a viral video made by somebody named Joshua, here's the last name I'm never going to be able to pronounce, Malekula. I bet that's right. A South African preacher who shared his quote-unquote divine prophecy to YouTube. And then this thing called Christian TikTok, of which I was blissfully unaware until just this afternoon, got a hold of it and ran with it like the bunch of fools they are. And now there are reports of people quitting their jobs and giving away their cars. And sorry, Pumpkin, but you will regret this. You will regret this. And in the future, when anyone within the very distant sound of my voice believes that the rapture is upon us, or it's to be the end of the world, or that Jesus is verifiably returning, I will bet any amount of money, up to and including my full net worth, that it's not so.
Well, speaking of betting money, I know someone personally who back in the turn of the century, remember the whole thing about when the dates changed from 1999 to 2000?
The end of the computer world.
Right. He maxed out every credit card he could, figuring that he'd never have to pay because the world was going to end.
Well, yeah, not exactly the sharpest move one could have predicted, but understandable knowing what we know of human nature.
Well, he put his money where his mouth is. I'll give him that.
Yeah, and then he paid it back over the course of the next 20 years. Or just simply declared bankruptcy, which a lot of people like to do. I once knew a couple, and I want to make it clear that these were not my friends. I just knew them. The woman was technically my boss. Not technically, she was my boss. And they went on a big, expensive vacation that lasted a very long time. And when she got back, I said, because, I knew what she made. We had essentially the same job. And I said, how the hell could you afford that? And she said, oh, we're declaring bankruptcy next week.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
That's got to be illegal to knowingly rack up debt. Yeah, we have to ask a lawyer. So, do you know what happened thereafter? Is there
I do not. She miraculously just kind of disappeared and was replaced by another person. Who did not declare bankruptcy to the best of my knowledge. Anyway, today, Ant, we're supposed to be talking about those little ideological bubbles that we all find ourselves in. And, this Charlie Kirk business that is getting to be in the rear view mirror is not a bad way to start framing it, right? Because there were obviously at least two different groups of people who I observed in the wake of the murder. One group was horrified by what happened and couldn't stop weeping. And the other half was celebrating with tremendous glee and couldn't stop making fools of themselves on social media. Fast forward a little bit, and the people who were brokenhearted, I've got nothing to say to or about them. I understand they were brokenhearted. They comported themselves relatively well, all things considered, and we don't really have to talk about them so much. There was a bloodthirsty group, not perfectly coincidental with those who were heartbroken, who decided they wanted to go after all of the people who laughed and giggled about the death of a human being. And how better to go after them than by trying to take a chunk out of them in their personal lives and, getting them fired and things like this. And then the wave of new videos from the people who were laughing and dancing and singing about how unfair it was that they just got fired. And all of a sudden, they were thinking very, very differently. But the thing that kept coming back over and over and over again was that they couldn't believe anybody could see it any other way.
Right. Yes.
And I think, there's a lot of blame to go around here. A lot of people acted very poorly, as is often the case when things happen. I just want to talk about this propensity that we have to think that every rational person just naturally agrees with us.
Yeah.
But how do people miss so many other people on the other side of every issue? How do you just miss them all together? It's like they're not even there.
Part of this, there's a psychological phenomenon his name escapes me. You may well know what it is, that everybody thinks that they're average. And this is why, earlier in the previous segment, we were talking about people complaining about the price of housing. And this is why I think people have a tendency to report anecdotes rather than data. Because whatever experience they have, well, of course, that's average. Because the presumption is that one is average, when in fact, that's often not the case.
Yeah, and, as I sit here thinking about it, we talk about this sort of thing a lot, right? Where not only what you just said, that's a weird phenomenon, right? That people just naturally assume that everybody's kind of like they are and they're like everybody else. And that makes a lot of sense until you get to the level of opinions. And, we have radically different opinions. You and I agree on almost everything, and we would go to the mattresses against each other over any number of things, right? We probably agree 90% of the time.
Yeah, easily.
And we don't allow the other 10% to make us bloodthirsty against each other. But we know that 10% exists.
Oh, not only does it exist, it's how should I say? It involves fundamental stuff in both of our cases, in both of our sides. And yet,
yeah, that's right. That's right.
We're happy to put it aside
and move forward, right? And it's so unimportant in the grand scheme of things, not in the scheme of things, but in the grand scheme of things, that we can let it go because, we both know we have bigger fish to fry, and the things that we agree on are infinitely more important and deeper than the things we don't agree on.
Yeah, let me put just a little bit of color on that. We're not saying that these things are important to us that we've decided just to put aside. We both still hold them very dear. We just don't make them part of our relationship.
Yeah, but more than that, Ant, I know what yours are and you know what mine are.
Right, yeah.
We operate under no illusions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There are things I will never be able to prevail upon with you, and vice versa. And okay, notice there are two very important things here. A, we understand, and B, we don't let it affect us.
Yes, and you know why? Because we both believe fundamentally in human dignity. And I respect you as a person. Doesn't mean I have to agree with you, but it does mean that I'm going to interact with you in a respectful manner.
Right. So how is it that we've managed to come to a place where people seem to be genuinely shocked that other people might disagree with them? They seem to have no understanding that there are large swaths of humanity that agree with them on almost nothing.
Yep.
And I'm not talking about insignificant disagreements. I'm talking about massive, wholesale disagreements.
I think a large part of it is kind of trite to blame things on social media, but I think this is true. A large part of it is the way social media does what it does. It's designed to show you things that you have expressed an interest in. Now, Here I am. I'm a admittedly right-leaning economist. My sister, whom I love dearly, is a left-leaning professor of theater and dance. from time to time, I notice her on Facebook, on her phone, looking at Facebook. It's like a completely different app. I've never seen this stuff on there that she's looking at.
No, and I notice it most on Twitter, where if I say something that's particularly, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more than just critical, right? If I say something that comes off as a condemnation of Group X, I get Group Not X over and over and over again to the exclusion of everything else. Until I make a remark that is in the same neighborhood about Group Not X, at which point it kicks me right back to Group X again. As if there are only two flavors of humanity, and I must be one of them or the other of them. And X, Twitter, whatever the hell we're supposed to call it now, is going to carefully insulate me from what it thinks or opinions I won't agree with. I mean, I go out of my way to follow people with whom I have severe disagreements, just so I see it.
Yeah,
I don't want to get stuck in an ideological bubble. I want to see what all the crackpots are saying from every conceivable side of every story I see. I'll never get that, but at least I'm trying. A lot of people aren't even trying.
Yeah, well, and I think you and I want to see it for the same reason. I need to know when my own thinking has gone off the rails. And asking people in my bubble is not going to get me anywhere. They're all going to agree, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. I need to hear from people who disagree with me.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Facebook, Twitter aren't the places to do that, because if indeed you do manage to break out of the bubble and start interacting with people who disagree with you, all you get is vitriol.
Well, all you get is a new bubble.
Right, sure.
Right? Our bubbles just bounce off each other over and over again as if that's really what we all want and need. And you know it's gotten bad because here we are, Ant, it's September 22nd as we sit here, which means that my favorite and the best American holiday is coming up soon. It's almost time for Thanksgiving. And I'm going to make this bold prediction about the future 1 month hence. Many, many people on the political left bubble are going to make public how they're not having Thanksgiving dinner with anybody in their damn families ever again because they disagree with them politically. Now, that makes you a bit of an imbecile. Now, look, if I woke up and found out that everybody in my family was a member of the Klan, I might say the level of political difference in my family is such that perhaps Thanksgiving is better spent somewhere else. Now, something short of that, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to say anything of the sort, because that would make me the biggest jerk in the world. And oddly enough, you don't see this from the political right.
Oh, I do.
I don't. In my bubble, I'm not allowed to see any of this from the political right.
Oh, I see. I was going to say, I see on both the left and the right, I see this same phenomenon, that the people who get most angry when when I encounter them disagreeing with me, the ones who get the most angry are also the ones who are least able to defend their positions.
But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who disavow their families over politics.
But I think it comes from the same thing. At some level, you're aware of this disconnect, that you hold this thing to be important, yet at the same time you recognize that you're unable to articulate why it's important or why you're holding it as opposed to something else. And that creates tremendous discord within the person. And that's what comes out as anger.
Yeah, that's a level of self-awareness that I don't think.
No, I'm not saying it's no. I don't think it has anything to do with self-awareness. It's an automatic thing. How best can I resolve this tension within me? It's to get away from you, because when you're not here, there's nothing pointing to this tension, to my inability to articulate why I believe this thing that I think is so important.
Yeah, I'm going to have to think about that. I don't know if I agree with you, but I agree more with the more formulated version you just offered than I did with the earlier one. It's just, and I do want to lay this at the feet of social media, right? We are, in no uncertain terms now, programmed by algorithm. And we always have been. Look, in any time where there was media that was sold, you were going to be programmed by algorithm. It just becomes more obvious. The companies that develop the algorithms are much more sophisticated about it now than they ever have been in the past. And people miss the most important thing, because in the past, you, Ant, the viewer of television, the reader of newspapers and magazines, you got to kind of go and pick and choose this or that. And you made some obvious decisions, right? I'm going to read the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. Very few people read both, right? So it's one, it's the other, and we fall on largely ideological lines. You're going to watch this news channel or that news channel, etc., etc. But notice what was happening. You were the consumer and those were the products.
Mm.
You're not the consumer anymore. You're the product.
Right. Yeah.
And you're being manipulated. Why? Sales. That's why we always manipulate everything. So if you're the product, it's in the interest of the social media provider to keep you whipped in a frenzy, hate scrolling, doom scrolling day after day after day, saying things like, those bastards on the other side, I can't believe it. Look at what they're doing now. Those are the people you made at soccer practice.
Right. Yes.
Come on. Give it a rest, for the love of God. And the more seriously you take your membership in your insular bubble, the less human you will be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're just going to turn out to be a partisan crank that nobody wants to be near, except all the other partisan cranks who happen to believe with your definition of correct partisanship. And it's going to be just that simple. And yeah, in America, we break down, roughly speaking, into a couple of camps, but it's not that simple, right? There's a number of bubbles out there. Earlier, I referred to Christian TikTok. There's a bubble if I ever heard of one. How much interaction do you think is happening between Christian TikTok and us? I'm guessing none.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing none. And hey, that might be to everybody's preference, but look at what's lost. Any idea of social cohesion is just gone.
What you're describing is very similar to what people have started to experience with AI. People who have gone down rabbit holes, in largely, not always, but largely, there's some mental illness that they bring to the table. In AI, all AI does is magnify and send back to you what you show it. So in that sense, your bubble is no different. Yes, you're talking to human beings, but the human beings are being selected by an algorithm to tell you what you want to hear.
It's like going to Catholic school from K through 12 and then going to college, finding out there are non-Catholics in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, what do you mean? You disagree with me? And being legitimately shocked by it, right?
Words and Numbers is part of the CiVL network. CiVL is a streaming platform dedicated to upgrading civilization by exploring better ways for people to organize, innovate, and thrive. At CiVL, we believe that societies flourish when their members honor the civic equality of all people and engage with one another through cooperation. CiVL seeks great minds from around the world to share bold ideas for fostering healthy, dynamic societies. By creating space for honest disagreement among people who share a commitment to building a better future, CiVL offers a refreshing alternative to divisive punditry and insular echo chambers. Words and Numbers is freely available, but those who subscribe to CiVL will access exclusive content, including regular live streams and conversations with remarkable people who are working to build a better society. For more information and to subscribe, visit civil.com. That's CIVL.com. Use the code Words and Numbers, that's one word, for 50% off an annual subscription. Let me point out a counterexample. At least it's a partial counterexample, and I'm not sure why it is, but maybe we can hash this out. There's one place in social media where you still get what you're describing, but I see it way less, and that's YouTube. I've got hundreds of videos on YouTube. All of our episodes are on YouTube, and often people will get on there and leave comments, and they're disagreeing with something we've said, and not all the time by any means, but by a huge fraction of the time compared to Facebook and X. When I engage with them, we get a decent back and forth. We don't necessarily come away agreeing, but it's a civil conversation.
It's weird because I always took the admonition not to read the comments very seriously. So in all the thousands of things, I dare say tens of thousands of things we have released into the wild, I have read exactly none of the comments on any of them. But with the new move to put the podcast on YouTube, I started dipping my toe. And I have to admit, I've been really pleased.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I don't care if people agree or not. I just care that they're decent about it. And they almost always are.
Yeah.
So now, in an unlikely turn, I'm actually participating in the comments in our own videos.
Right, yeah. And when I find that what brings the temperature down quite a bit is when they realize that we're the guys in the video.
Yeah.
And usually I get something like, well, I disagree with you, but I respect the fact you came on here to talk to me. And I think it's that humanizing element that makes things, people are inherently, we want to be social. We're inherently good to, you see each other at the soccer game, and we're much more accepting. It's when you become the keyboard warrior and you're responding not to a human being, but to text on a page, that the hatred comes out.
So two things. First, I don't want to meet anybody at a soccer game. It's just a bad example I used. I'm never going to a soccer game. Soccer's horrible, and it should not be played here or anywhere. But having set that off to the side, people respond to a caricaturized version of other people, right? They don't see you, they see your caricature. And they say, all right, well, Ant believes this, this, and this, therefore he must believe all these other things that other similar people believe. These first three things, they all believe these things. So I'm just going to call him an ass. And they never stop to think, maybe Ant's an actual human being who is going to take being called an ass to heart, and it's going to ruin his day. So, we tend just not to think of each other in the way we should as human beings. And I'll say it again, humans are ends, not means. Right? You have to treat a human being as an end in and of himself, not as the means to get you something that you want. Now, we all serve as means to other people. I don't want to just say that's never appropriate, but human beings are first and foremost ends. And it does us all well to remember that. But how do we remember it if we never see other people who aren't like us at all? Right? When the algorithms spit out carbon copies of all of our worst characteristics and throws those people in one room functionally together, and then does it for this group and this group and this group and this group, you're not going to get the best of humanity in those groups.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a little bit of interaction and a lot of people have been using the word empathy a lot lately, and I think empathy is kind of, I'm with Charlie Kirk on this one, empathy is a bit of a new agey nonsense word, but what it really takes is sympathy, your ability to see another life and understand what a person is very likely feeling.
And
right?
part of that is opening your mind to the fact that we're not split into left and right. Humans are complex creatures, and someone may agree with the right on certain things and with the left on other things. There is no line of demarcation like that. And I think that's actually one of the places where libertarians, to the extent that they've succeeded at anything, they have managed on their better days to be accepting of people who believe who believe some of the things they believe without having to believe all of them.
Yeah. On their better days. But this is why, back to the idea of caricature, I defy you to turn on Fox News or MSNBC and tell me that you really think that's right. That either one of them is doing a nice job of covering the news. These are cartoons that are made for echo chambers, and they're
made to attract your attention and make you mad, so that you can keep coming
right.
back, so they can sell advertising.
That's right, because you're the product.
Yeah.
Over and over and over, you see it again and again, and if your echo chamber is so pervasive that you don't hear the echo for what it is, that's a you problem. And you should take some positive steps. And I would say the very first positive step you should take is to go out of your way to consume media that you think is from the other crazy side that you don't think should ever be listened to. Whatever your side is, I don't care what your side is. Go find people with whom you have severe disagreements and consume their product. And then I want you to go one step further and find a way to understand them in the most charitable way possible. And that's the hard part. Anybody can turn something on, but can you explain your opponent's political beliefs as well as your opponents can? Because then and only then...
And don't write it off as, well, my opponent's beliefs are stupid. They're not logical. No. They are. They're smart and they are logical.
And only if you can explain your opponent's beliefs as well as your opponent can, are you now qualified to comment.
Yes, right.
It would be like asking me about the finer points of the rules of soccer. Going back to that tired example that we're using. I have no idea. I don't want to know. And if you ask me to opine on the rules of soccer, anything that comes out of my mouth is definitionally ignorant. Now, if you want to talk about American football, which is the only kind of football there is, except for Australian rules football, now I'll have something to say.
You're talking about the football where you use your hands.
Shut up. This is why nobody likes you. It's this kind of thing right here.
In the past, James has talked about Erica Kirk forgiving Charlie's murderer and how much strength that takes. That's the same kind of strength, albeit on a smaller scale, but that's what we're talking about here, is forgive the other person. The other person's going to say things that make you mad. Let it go. The other person's going to say things that you think are stupid. Let it go. Engage with other people you disagree with as human beings.
Wouldn't that be something? And look, I understand better than most the very strong desire to live in an antisocial way. Maybe that's the best way of putting it. I've said repeatedly that in the 7 years I've lived in my house, I've not met my neighbors. I have no idea who my neighbors are. The only one of my immediate neighbors who I've met is when some poor girl took my my mailbox off its pedestal when she rammed her car into it. Right. This is what it takes to get me to answer the door when there's a neighbor ringing the bell. You know, a lot of us would rather be left alone a lot of the time, but that's not really what we're talking about here, because I like to be left alone, and yet there's an X feed open on my computer, literally if I'm sitting at the computer. So I'm interacting with other humans somehow. I try to approach X with a certain sense of humor because I know it's not real life. I'm not convinced other people realize that that's not real life, right? Facebook is a little more real lifey to me. Why? Because people who I've actually met are there and we interact in certain ways. But, you know, social media is still media. It's just a thing. It's not reality. It's a carnival mirror held up to reality. And you have to do your part to go find out what real reality looks like, because if you fall for it, you'll fall for anything.
Words and Numbers is a CiVL original podcast. We work with CiVL to advance their mission of upgrading civilization by exploring ideas that promote civic equality and cooperation. We believe the most pressing issues humans face, war, poverty, debt, tribalism, arise from coercive institutions that bring out the worst in us. We at CiVL look to voluntary solutions to these and other problems. We invite you to explore CiVL's new platform at civil.com. That's CiVL.com.